The cottonwood tree stood alone on the ridge above the Calloway ranch, its branches reaching toward a sky the color of old bone. Jesse Calloway sat between two headstones, weathered gray stones that bore names he could no longer speak aloud without feeling his throat close. The wind moved through the leaves overhead, making a sound like whispered conversations in a language he had forgotten how to understand. He held 2 rifle bullets in his palm. They were old cartridges, corroded at the edges, the brass gone green in places. Every year on this day he brought them here. Every year he placed one on each headstone, a ritual whose meaning he could not explain to anyone, least of all himself. The bullets had never been fired. They never would be. They were monuments to the weight of things left undone. Hannah Calloway, born 1840, died 1872. Lily Calloway, born 1869, died 1872. 4 years. It had been 4 years since the fire. 4 years since he had ridden home from town, drunk and stumbling to find the barn engulfed in flames and his wife screaming his daughter's name. 4 years since he had learned that some mistakes cannot be unmade, some absences cannot be explained, some doors once closed will never open again. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the mountains. The storm was coming from the west, pushing dark clouds ahead of it like sheep before wolves. Jesse set the bullets down, one on each stone, and stood slowly. His knees protested. Everything protested these days. 38 years old, and he moved like a man twice that age, like the war had settled into his bones and made a home there. He walked back toward the ranch house without looking behind him. If he looked back, he might stay at those graves until the storm found him, and staying would solve nothing. The dead did not speak. They did not forgive. They simply waited in the earth while the living carried their weight through every waking hour. Dutch, his gray mare, was already saddled when he reached the barn. He had work to do, fence line to check along the eastern boundary posts that needed replacing before winter came. Work was the only thing that kept the ghosts at bay, work and silence and the slow passage of empty days. But today the work would have to wait. He had been tracking a man for 3 days now, not for law or money, but for reasons he told himself were about justice, and knew in his quieter moments were about something darker. The man's name was Cutter, a drifter who had stolen horses from the Henderson Ranch 2 weeks prior. Jesse had followed his trail north toward the Badlands, watching the tracks grow fresher, feeling the old familiar tightening in his chest that came before violence. He swung into the saddle and turned Dutch toward the eastern hills. The tracks led that direction, winding through scrub oak and over rocky ground where a less experienced tracker would have lost them. Jesse had learned to track during the war. He had learned many things during the war, most of which he wished he could forget. The morning wore on. The sun climbed higher, turning the Wyoming landscape into something harsh and biblical. Heat rose from the red earth in visible waves. Dutch picked her way carefully over loose stones, her ears swiveling at every sound. Jesse watched the ground, reading the story written there. The man he followed was slowing down. The horse was lame. They would not get much farther. Then Dutch stopped. Jesse had not pulled the reins. The mare simply halted mid-step, her whole body going rigid. Her ears flattened against her skull. A low sound came from her throat, something between a whine and a warning. "Easy, girl," Jesse said quietly. "What is it?" The smell reached him a moment later. Sweet and wrong. The smell of death under a summer sun. He had known that smell in field hospitals during the war, in places where the dead outnumbered the living and the earth itself seemed to rot. It was a smell that lived in memory, that never quite left you once you had known it. He dismounted and tied Dutch to a stunted pine. She stamped and pulled against the rope, wanting to be anywhere but here. Jesse pulled his rifle from its scabbard and checked the chamber. Loaded, 6 rounds. More than enough for whatever waited ahead. The wagon sat in a shallow depression about 200 yards off the trail. At first he thought it was abandoned, just another piece of frontier wreckage left to bleach under the sun. Then he saw the canvas top half collapsed, moving slightly in the hot wind. One wheel was shattered, the spokes jutting out like broken ribs. No mule, no horse. Just the wagon listing to one side like a ship taking on water. Jessie approached slowly, rifle ready, every sense alert. Buzzards circled overhead, patient and knowing. They had been at their work already. He could tell from the way they flew, lazy and satisfied. He found the woman first. She lay in the narrow strip of shade beside the wagon, her back against the broken wheel. Her dress was calico faded blue with small flowers. Her hair was dark red, the color of autumn leaves tangled with dust and dried blood. Her hands were folded in her lap, as if she had simply sat down to rest and never stood again. For one moment, Jessie thought she might be sleeping. Then he saw the wound. It was in her side just below the ribs. A puncture, clean-edged, the kind made by a blade. The blood had dried black around it, soaking into the fabric of her dress. Not a snake bite, not an accident. Someone had done this to her. Someone had put a knife into this woman and left her to die in the wasteland. Jessie knelt beside her and removed his hat. He should say a prayer, he knew that. But the words would not come. Prayer required faith, and faith had died in him the night the barn burned. He settled for silence, for a moment of recognition that a life had ended here, that this woman had been someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother. Then he heard it. Humming, soft and tuneless, coming from inside the wagon, the sound of a child's voice, cracked and dry but persistent, singing to keep the darkness away. Jessie stood slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. He pulled back the canvas flap with the barrel of his rifle, not knowing what he would find, half expecting another body. A girl sat cross-legged among scattered belongings, clothes spilling from a trunk, a cracked mirror reflecting fragments of light, a Bible with pressed flowers marking pages. She was small, maybe 8 years old, with red hair, lighter than her mother's, copper-colored, where the sun touched it. Her face was burned raw, lips cracked and bleeding. She held a faded blue handkerchief pressed against her cheek, and she was humming a melody Jessie did not recognize. When she saw him, she stopped. They stared at each other. The girl's eyes were brown, darker than honey, lighter than earth, old eyes in a young face. Eyes that had seen too much and understood more than they should. Her free hand moved to something beside her, quick as a snake's strike, and when it came back up, she was holding a hunting knife. The blade was too big for her small hand, but she held it steady, pointing at Jessie's chest. Her arm did not shake. Her eyes did not blink. "Hey there," Jessie said, keeping his voice level. He lowered the rifle slowly. "I am not going to hurt you." The girl said nothing. The knife did not waver. "My name is Jessie Calloway. I have a ranch about 20 miles south of here. I saw your wagon and came to help. Did he send you?" The girl's voice was a rasp, dry as wind through dead grass. "Who? You know who." Jessie shook his head slowly. "I do not know who you mean. I am just a rancher. I was tracking someone, and I found you." The girl's eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, waiting for the betrayal. Jessie stayed very still. He had seen this before. A cornered animal deciding whether to bite or run. You moved wrong, and the decision would be made for you. "Your mother," Jessie said carefully. "The woman outside. How long has she been gone?" 3 days. The girl's voice was flat, empty of feeling. "Maybe 4. I stopped counting. Are you hurt? No. You thirsty?" A flicker of something in those old young eyes. Not quite hope. Something smaller and more cautious. The girl nodded once. Jessie unhooked his canteen from his belt and held it out. The girl did not take it. He set it on the wagon bed between them and stepped back. She waited, counting something in her head, her lips moving silently. Then she grabbed the canteen with her free hand, never letting go of the knife, and drank. Water spilled down her chin and neck. She drank until she choked, coughed. Drank again. "Easy," Jessie said. "Slow. There is more." She lowered the canteen and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. The knife was back at her side now, but still in her grip. "What is your name?" Jessie asked. "Wren. That is a good name. It is the only one I have." Jessie almost smiled. "Fair enough. Wren. I need to look at your mother. Then we need to get you somewhere safe, somewhere with food and water and shade. Will you let me do that?" Wren looked past him toward where her mother lay. "I already looked at her. She is dead, I know. But I need to see something." What? Jessie hesitated. The truth or a lie? The truth would frighten her. A lie would make her trust him less when she discovered it. He chose truth. I need to see how she died. Wren's grip on the knife tightened. Why? Because someone did this to her, and I need to know who. The girl went very still. You can tell that Jessie nodded. After a long moment, Wren set down the knife. She picked it up again and tucked it into her belt. If you are lying, she said, I will cut you while you sleep. That is fair. Jessie climbed out of the wagon and walked to the woman's body. Wren followed, moving slowly, stiff from days of sitting in one position. She stood a few feet away, watching as Jessie examined the wound. It was clean, professional. Someone who knew where to put a blade to kill quickly. The woman would have bled out in minutes, maybe less. There were no defensive wounds on her hands. She had been taken by surprise, or she had not fought back. Jessie looked around the ground near the wagon. Boot prints in the dust, almost blown away by wind, but still visible. A man's boots, not large. Someone slight quick. The prints led away to the north and disappeared into rocky ground. Do you know who did this? He asked Wren. The girl was silent for so long, Jessie thought she would not answer. Then she said, My mama was running from someone, a man. She said he would kill us if he found us. Do you know his name? Wren shook her head. She just called him the Shadow. She said he followed us everywhere, that we could never stop moving or he would catch up. Jessie stood and looked north toward where the tracks vanished. A hired killer. Someone tracking this woman and her daughter across the territory. Someone patient enough to wait for the right moment and skilled enough to leave almost no trace. He would come back. Men like that always came back to finish the job. We need to go, Jessie said. Now, where my ranch? You will be safe there. How do you know? Because I will make sure of it. Wren looked at him with those ancient eyes. Why would you do that? You do not know me. Jessie thought of the graves on the hill, of the bullets he placed there every year, of the weight he carried that never grew lighter no matter how many miles he walked beneath it. Because your mother brought you this far, he said, someone needs to take you the rest of the way. He went to the wagon and began searching through the scattered belongings. Clothes mostly, a few personal items, letters tied with string. He picked up the letters and was about to set them aside when something fell from between the pages. A photograph, old, the edges worn soft. 4 people standing in front of a military tent, 2 men in Union uniforms, 2 women in simple dresses. Jessie's hand began to shake before his mind fully registered what he was seeing. The man on the left was younger, his face still unlined, but Jessie recognized him, recognized himself. 20 years younger before the war had carved itself into his features. Beside him stood Hannah, beautiful Hannah before sickness and fire had taken her. The other man was taller, broader through the shoulders, dark hair and an easy smile that did not reach his eyes. Jessie knew that face too, knew it from 1,000 nightmares. Thomas Morrison. And beside Thomas stood a woman with red hair and a cautious expression. The same woman who now lay dead beside the wagon, Nora Morrison. Jessie's vision swam. The photograph trembled in his hand. This was not coincidence. Could not be coincidence. Nora had known him, had known where to find him. She had been coming here, deliberately bringing her daughter to him. But why? He looked at Wren, seeing her differently now. This was Thomas Morrison's daughter, the child of a man Jessie had not spoken to in 12 years, a man whose name he could not hear without feeling the old guilt rise up like bile in his throat. Did your mother ever mention me? Jessie asked, his voice tight. Did she ever say my name? Wren shook her head. She just said we were going to find someone who owed my father. Jessie sat down hard on the wagon bed. Owed, that was one way to put it. Thomas Morrison had saved Jessie's life during the war, had pulled him from a burning building while shells exploded around them. And Jessie had repaid that debt by leaving Thomas and 11 other men to die at a place called Cedar Creek. That was the story Thomas told anyway. The story that had followed Jessie across 3 territories. The story that had driven him to this isolated ranch where no one knew his name or his shame. Now Thomas's widow had died trying to reach him. And Thomas's daughter sat watching him with her father's eyes, waiting to see what he would do. Jessie found more papers in the wagon. A land claim certificate. Mining rights to a silver deposit in Colorado Territory registered to Nora Morrison. Worth a fortune if the claim was legitimate. He folded it carefully and put it in his coat pocket. Something told him this document mattered, that someone might kill for it. At the bottom of the trunk he found a small leather journal, Nora's diary. Most of the pages were filled with mundane details of travel, supplies purchased, miles covered, towns avoided. But the last entry was different. June 17th, 1876. Found him. Callaway Ranch, 40 miles north of Elk Creek. Thomas said if anything happened, bring Wren to Jesse. Said Jesse owed him a life debt. That remains uncertain what that means. Thomas is dead now. Victor is coming. Jesse Callaway is our only chance. God forgive me for using him this way, but I have no choice. Wren must survive. That is all that matters. Jesse read it 3 times. Each time the words hit harder. Nora had known exactly who he was, had known about the debt, real or imagined, and she had weaponized his guilt, counted on it to make him protect her daughter. The calculation in it should have angered him. Instead, he felt a strange respect. A mother doing whatever necessary to save her child. He understood that. Hannah would have done the same. He looked up to find Wren watching him. "Did you know my father?" she asked. Jesse folded the journal and stood. "Yes." "Were you friends once?" "A long time ago." "What happened?" "War happened." Wren nodded as if this explained everything. Maybe it did. Maybe war was all the explanation anyone needed for broken friendships and old debts, and the kind of guilt that followed a man across decades. "We need to bury your mother," Jesse said. "Then we will go." They worked in silence as the sun climbed higher. Jesse dug while Wren gathered stones to mark the grave. He chose a spot under a small rise where wildflowers grew where the view stretched east toward mountains. Good ground. Better than dying alone in a wagon. When the grave was deep enough, Jesse wrapped Nora Morrison in canvas from the wagon and lowered her down gently. Wren stood at the edge, her face carved from stone, no tears, no sound. Just that terrible stillness that children learn when they have cried all the tears they have. "You want to say something?" Jesse asked. "Like what? Anything. Whatever you need to say." Wren was quiet for a long time. Then Mama tried. She tried real hard. That should count for something. Jesse filled the grave and built a cairn of stones. He had no wood for a cross. He carved Nora's name into a flat stone with his knife and set it at the head of the mound. Not much of a marker. But it was something. Proof that she had existed, that she mattered, that someone had taken the time to acknowledge her passing. They rode south through the afternoon heat. Wren sat in front of Jesse on Dutch's saddle, her small body rigid, never relaxing against his chest. She watched the landscape pass with fierce attention, as if memorizing every detail in case she needed to find her way back. Jesse watched the horizon for signs of pursuit. The man who killed Nora might still be tracking them, or this Victor that Nora had mentioned in her diary. Whoever he was, he would be looking for Wren and the mining claim. Men killed for less. The ranch came into view as the sun began its descent. Low log walls, a barn rebuilt after the fire, a small corral, a vegetable garden gone mostly to weeds. It was not much, but it was defensible. And it was all Jesse had. Wren looked at the buildings without comment. Jesse helped her down from the saddle, and she stood in the yard, swaying slightly dizzy from heat and dehydration and 3 days of hell. "Come inside," Jesse said. "I will get you food. I am not hungry. You need to eat anyway." The cabin was dim and cool after the bright heat outside. Jesse sat Wren at the table and pumped water into a cup. She drank it all. He refilled it. She drank half. "When did you eat last?" he asked. "I do not remember." Jesse made cornbread and beans the only meal he knew by heart. He set the plate in front of her with a spoon. She looked at it for a long moment, then began to eat. Slowly at first, then faster, hunched over the plate like someone might take it away. "Nobody is taking it," Jesse said gently. She looked up at him, mouth full, and something in her expression made his chest tight. This child had learned not to trust kindness, had learned that anything good could be stolen at any moment. He knew that lesson. He had taught it to himself. When she finished eating, Jesse showed her the bed in the corner. It had been his once. He slept in a chair most nights now, when he slept at all. "You can rest here," he said. "Where will you be outside?" "On the porch." "Why, to keep watch." "For what?" "For whatever comes." Wren nodded and climbed into the bed without removing her boots. She was asleep in seconds. The sleep of complete exhaustion, her small body finally surrendering to the demands it had been denying for days. Jesse sat on the porch as dusk settled over the ranch. The sky turned purple, then indigo, then black. Stars emerged one by one. He held his rifle across his knees and listened to the night sounds. Crickets. An owl in the barn. Somewhere distant, a coyote's lonely call. He thought about Thomas Morrison, about Cedar Creek, about the night 12 men died because Jesse had ordered a retreat. That was Thomas's version of events, the version he had told anyone who would listen after the war, the version that had followed Jesse like a shadow for 12 years. Jesse remembered it differently, remembered being pinned down by Confederate fire, remembered the order coming from above to fall back, remembered Thomas refusing, saying they could hold that retreat was cowardice, remembered leaving anyway because orders were orders, and staying meant dying for nothing. He had never known if Thomas survived that night, had never asked, had simply taken his discharge and moved west and tried to bury the war along with everything else. Now he knew. Thomas had survived, had married Nora, had fathered a daughter, and at some point had written to his wife about Jesse Calloway, about a debt owed, about a man who might help if the worst happened. The worst had happened. Jesse heard footsteps before he saw the rider, a single horse moving slowly through the darkness. He stood and raised his rifle, sighting down the barrel at the approaching figure. "Hello?" The house, a woman's voice called. "It is Pearl Hutchkins." Jesse lowered the rifle and stepped off the porch. Pearl dismounted and tied her horse, moving with the careful precision of someone who had made this ride many times before. Pearl was 60 years old and harder than the land she lived on. She ran the general store in Elk Creek and knew everyone's business before they knew it themselves. She looked at Jesse with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Tommy at the livery said you rode in with a child," she said. "That true?" "It is true." "Where did she come from?" "Found her in a wagon 20 miles north. Her mother was dead." Pearl's expression did not change. "Dead? How murdered?" Now Pearl's eyes narrowed. "You report this?" "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because I needed to get the girl somewhere safe first." Pearl walked past him toward the cabin. Through the open door she could see Wren's small form on the bed. Pearl stood there for a long moment, then turned back to Jesse. "Good Lord," she whispered. "She has Thomas's eyes." Jesse went very still. "How do you know Thomas Morrison?" Pearl's face hardened. "My husband James served with him, died with him at Cedar Creek when you ordered the retreat and left them behind." The words hit like bullets. Jesse had known Pearl for 5 years, had bought supplies from her store, had exchanged polite nods on the street. He had not known her husband died at Cedar Creek, had not connected that particular ghost to her. "I followed orders," he said quietly. "So did they, and they died following them." The silence stretched between them, years of history, years of blame, years of the dead standing between the living. "Does she know?" Pearl asked finally. "Does the girl know what you did?" "Nobody knows." Jesse's voice was flat. "And it stays that way." Pearl studied him for a long time. Then she surprised him. "I hated you for 10 years, she said. "Hated the thought of you. Then 4 years ago, I saw you at your wife's funeral. Saw you standing over that grave with your daughter's coffin. And I realized you were already carrying more weight than I could add to." She turned toward her horse. "I will keep your secret, Jesse Calloway, but not for you. For that child in there who deserves better than being caught in the middle of old men's wars. Thank you. Do not thank me. Just do right by her. That is all the thanks I need." Pearl rode away into the darkness. Jesse stood in the yard for a long time after she left, feeling the weight of it all settling on his shoulders. Thomas's daughter sleeping in his bed. Pearl's dead husband adding to the count at Cedar Creek. Nora's calculated gamble that Jesse's guilt would make him the perfect protector. It should have made him angry. Instead, it just made him tired. He went back to the porch and sat down. Through the open door he could hear Wren breathing deep and steady, the sleep of a child who had run out of strength to stay awake. Tomorrow she would wake up in a strange place with a strange man and have to decide whether to trust him. Jessie did not know what he would tell her, did not know how to explain that her mother had brought her to a man haunted by her father's ghost, that the debt Nora mentioned was built on lies and guilt and the kind of history that could not be explained in words. All he knew was that someone had killed Nora Morrison, and whoever did it would be looking for Wren and the mining claim. And Jesse Calloway, for all his failures and ghosts and buried shame, was the only thing standing between this child and whatever darkness pursued her. He checked his rifle again. 6 rounds. He had 3 boxes of ammunition in the cabin, more than enough for what might come. He settled back in his chair and watched the road that led north. The night deepened. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. And Jesse Calloway, who had not prayed in 4 years, found himself speaking to the darkness. "Keep her safe," he said to whatever might be listening. "I could not save the others. Let me save this one." The darkness did not answer. It never did. But somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, and the storm that had been building all day finally broke. Rain began to fall soft at first, then harder, washing the dust from the air and turning the dry earth dark and rich. Jesse sat on the porch and let the rain soak him. It felt like baptism, like absolution he did not deserve, like the universe offering him one more chance to be the man he should have been all along. Inside, Wren slept on dreaming whatever dreams children dream when they have seen their mother die and found themselves in the hands of a stranger. Jesse hoped they were good dreams, hoped somewhere in that young mind there was still room for hope, for trust, for the belief that broken people could be fixed. Because that was what Nora Morrison had been counting on, that Jesse's brokenness would make him fight harder, that his guilt would make him vigilant, that his failures would make him determined not to fail again. She had weaponized his pain, and God help him, it was working. The rain fell harder, lightning split the sky, and Jesse Calloway sat between the storm and the sleeping child and made himself a promise. Whatever came through that darkness, whoever followed Wren Morrison to his door, they would have to go through him first. He had failed at Cedar Creek. He had failed Hannah and Lily. But he would not fail this time, could not fail this time, because if he did, there would be nothing left of him worth saving. The storm raged through the night. Jesse did not move from his post. He sat with his rifle and his ghosts and his fierce, desperate determination to finally do one thing right. And when morning came pale and clean after the storm, Wren woke to find him still there, still watching, still keeping the promise he had made in the darkness. She stood in the doorway, small and uncertain, and looked at him with those old young eyes. "You stayed," she said. "I told you I would. People say things. I am not people." Wren nodded slowly as if filing this information away for future reference. "What happens now? Now we figure out how to keep you alive. And I figure out who killed your mother, and we both figure out how to live with ghosts." Wren stepped onto the porch and stood beside him, looking out at the rain-washed land. "Do you have many ghosts?" "More than I can count." "Me too." They stood together in the clean morning air, 2 broken people trying to figure out how to be whole. And somewhere north in a town called Elk Creek, a man named Silas Crane was asking questions. Questions about a missing girl, questions about a rancher with a dark past, questions that would lead him eventually to this small ranch where Jesse Calloway was making his last stand against the failures of his life. But that would come later. For now, there was just this moment, this strange peace between storms. This child and this man both carrying weight too heavy for their shoulders, both trying to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could help each other carry it. Wren looked up at Jesse, her father's eyes in her mother's face, a ghost made flesh, a reminder of debts unpaid and sins unabsolved. "Are you a good man?" she asked. Jesse thought about Cedar Creek, about the barn burning while he drank in town, about all the ways he had failed when it mattered most. "No," he said, "but I am trying to be. That will have to be enough." Wren considered this. Then she took his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his scarred knuckles. "Okay," she said. "We will try together." And in that moment, Jesse Calloway felt something he had not felt in 4 years. Not hope, not redemption, just the smallest possibility that maybe the story was not over yet, that maybe there were still pages left to write, that maybe against all odds and reason, he might actually save someone this time. The sun broke through the clouds, the rain stopped, and the day began. The first week passed in careful silence. Jesse taught Wren the rhythms of ranch life, how to pump water from the well without straining the handle, how to gather eggs from the chickens without spooking them into flight, how to read the sky for storms and the wind for shifts in weather. She learned quickly, watching everything with those dark eyes that missed nothing, judging him with every glance. She did not call him anything, not Jesse, not Mr. Calloway, not Sir. She simply spoke to him as if names were unnecessary, as if they existed in some space beyond the need for such formalities. He did not push. He understood that trust was not given freely by children who had watched their mothers die. On the 8th morning, Jesse found her in the barn before dawn. She was standing beside Dutch, one hand on the mare's flank, speaking in low tones. The horse, who tolerated Jesse and nothing more, stood perfectly still, ears forward, listening to whatever secrets Wren was sharing. Jesse watched from the doorway, not wanting to interrupt this small communion. Then Wren turned, knowing somehow that he was there. She listens better than people, Wren said. Most animals do. Why is that? Because they do not pretend to understand when they do not. They just listen and let you be sad without trying to fix it. Jesse nodded. He had no answer better than that. They worked in silence, feeding the stock mucking stalls. The work was good. It kept hands busy and minds from wandering into dark places. But the dark places found them anyway. Jesse had been burning papers in the stove late at night when Wren could not see. Documents from the war, letters from Thomas Morrison that he had kept for reasons he could not name, commendations that felt like lies, everything that connected him to Cedar Creek, to the past, to the 12 men whose ghosts followed him through every waking hour. He thought he had been careful, but on the 9th morning, Wren appeared in the kitchen, holding a half-burned page. The edges were charred, but the words were still visible. A letter from Thomas, dated 1865, talking about Cedar Creek, about betrayal, about men left behind. "What is this?" she asked, her voice flat. Jesse felt his stomach drop. "Nothing. Old correspondence. It has my father's name on it. Thomas Morrison. I told you we served together. This letter says you left him to die, that you ordered a retreat and 12 men burned." Jesse took the page from her hand and crumpled it. That is one version of what happened. Is it true war is complicated? That is not an answer. Jesse met her eyes. The truth would drive her away. A lie would poison everything between them. He chose the only path he could live with. Your father believed I was responsible for those deaths. He spent years telling anyone who would listen. Whether he was right, I do not know anymore. I remember it differently. But the dead cannot testify, and the living make poor witnesses to their own choices. Wren stood very still. My mama brought me here even though she knew this, even though my father hated you. Yes. Why would she do that? Jesse sat down at the table, suddenly tired beyond measure. Because she was desperate. Because I was the only person your father mentioned who might help. Because sometimes people make impossible choices and hope they are wrong about the cost. Wren set the burned paper on the table between them. I need to know something. Ask. If you had to choose between saving me and saving yourself, what would you do? Jesse did not hesitate. You. How do I know that? Because I already made the other choice once, and I've been paying for it every day since. Wren studied his face for a long moment. Then she picked up the burned paper and threw it in the stove. The flames consumed it in seconds. I do not care what my father thought, she said. He is dead and I am alive, and you are the one who is here. That is what matters. Jesse felt something shift in his chest, something like hope, fragile and dangerous. But that night everything changed. He was checking the fence line along the western boundary when he saw the rider, a single horseman moving with purpose along the road from Elk Creek. Jesse watched from a distance as the man dismounted in town, tied his horse outside Pearl's store, and disappeared inside. Something in the way the man moved made Jesse uneasy, too deliberate, too observant. This was not a drifter or a cowhand looking for work. This was someone with a purpose. Jesse rode into town an hour later. Pearl was behind the counter, her face carefully neutral when she saw him. She glanced toward the back room, a warning in her eyes. "He asked about me," Jesse said quietly. Pearl nodded. "Man named Silas Crane. Says he is a detective from Kansas City, looking for a missing girl, red hair, about 8 years old. Says her uncle is worried sick. What did you tell him? That I mind my own business and suggest others do the same." "He believe you?" Pearl's mouth tightened. He smiled like a man who knows when he is being lied to. Said he would be staying at the boarding house. Said he had all the time in the world. Jesse bought supplies he did not need and rode home slowly, watching his back trail. No one followed. But that meant nothing. Men like Silas Crane did not need to follow. They just waited and watched and pieced together the truth from fragments. When Jesse returned to the ranch, he found Wren sitting on the porch with a book. Pearl had given it to her. Stories for Children. Wren looked up when she heard the horse. "Someone is looking for me," she said. It was not a question. "Yes. The man my mama was running from, maybe? Or someone working for him. What will you do? Keep you safe. How Jesse dismounted and tied Dutch. However I have to." That night, Jesse pulled out Nora's diary again. He had read it once quickly, looking for immediate threats. Now he read it carefully, looking for anything he had missed. The early entries were mundane: travel notes, supplies, the slow journey west from Kansas City. But as he read, deeper patterns emerged. Nora had been meticulous. She had planned everything. March 3rd, Thomas is getting worse. The drink has him now. He talks about the war constantly, about Cedar Creek, about Jesse Calloway. Says if anything happens to us, I should find Calloway. Says the man owes him. I do not understand this debt, but Thomas is insistent. April 17th, Thomas died last night. Liver finally gave out. Victor came to the funeral, offered to take Wren, raise her properly, he said. I saw how he looked at the mining papers. He does not want a niece. He wants the claim. We leave tomorrow. May 2nd, Victor has hired someone to follow us. I saw the man in Omaha, again in Cheyenne. We keep moving, but he is always there, patient as death. June 1st. I have been reading Thomas's letters about Jesse Calloway, about Cedar Creek, about the 12 men. Thomas blamed Calloway for everything, but I found another letter hidden, written to me but never sent. Thomas admits the truth. He stayed at Cedar Creek against orders, convinced others to stay, got them killed. Blamed Calloway because facing his own guilt was too hard. Jesse stopped reading. His hands were shaking. He read the passage again. Thomas blamed Calloway because facing his own guilt was too hard. 12 years. 12 years Jesse had carried the weight of those deaths. 12 years of believing he was responsible. And it had been a lie. Thomas Morrison's lie, told to escape his own culpability. He kept reading. June 10th. I understand now why Thomas sent me to Calloway, not because Calloway owes us, because we owe him. Thomas destroyed this man's reputation with lies. And now I am going to use those same lies to make Calloway protect Wren. I am weaponizing his guilt. God forgive me, but I have no choice. Victor will kill us both for that mining claim. And Jesse Calloway's guilt will make him fight harder than any man with a clear conscience. Broken people protect broken things because they understand how easily things shatter. Jesse closed the diary slowly. Nora had known the whole truth, had known Jesse was innocent of Cedar Creek. And she had used his false guilt anyway, had counted on it, had gambled her daughter's life on the certainty that Jesse would believe himself responsible and therefore fight to the death to atone. The manipulation should have enraged him. Instead, he felt a strange kinship with this dead woman. She had done what she needed to do to save her child. He could not fault her for that. Hannah would have done the same, would have used any weapon, told any lie, made any bargain to keep Lily safe. He looked through the open door at Wren, asleep in the bed. Did it matter that Nora had manipulated him? Did it change his responsibility to this child? No. If anything, it clarified things. Nora had been right. His guilt, real or false, made him the perfect guardian, because he could not survive another failure. The next morning, Jesse rode into Elk Creek alone. He told Wren to stay at the ranch, to keep the rifle loaded, to trust no one. She watched him go with those grave eyes, understanding more than he wanted her to. Pearl was sweeping the porch when he arrived. She set down the broom when she saw his face. "You found something," she said. Jessie handed her the diary open to the relevant pages. Pearl read in silence, her expression unchanging until she reached the end. Then she looked up at Jessie with something that might have been pity. "All these years," she said quietly, "all this blame you carried, and it was a lie. Does not matter now. How can you say that this changes everything?" Jessie shook his head. "The only thing it changes is why I am doing what I am doing. I thought I was atoning for Cedar Creek. Turns out I am just protecting a child because it is the right thing to do. Either way, the work is the same." "What about my James?" Pearl's voice cracked. "He died at Cedar Creek. Someone is responsible. Thomas Morrison is responsible. And he is already dead. No amount of blame will bring James back. We both know that." Pearl handed back the diary. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were not. "I hated you for so long, Jessie. And it was for nothing. Not for nothing. You loved your husband. Hate is just love with nowhere left to go." They stood in silence, two people carrying grief too heavy for words. Then Pearl touched his arm, brief and awkward. "The detective is asking questions about you," she said. "About your time in the war, about what happened to your family. Someone is feeding him information, who I do not know. But he knows things no stranger should know." Jessie felt ice in his gut. "What kind of things? That you were not home when your wife and daughter died, that you were in town, drinking." The truth Jessie had buried for 4 years, the shame he carried that eclipsed even Cedar Creek. He had been drowning his ghosts in whiskey while his family burned. Had come home too late, too drunk, too useless to save them. "Who knows that?" he asked quietly. In this town, Pearl looked away, maybe half a dozen people. But someone talked. Someone always talks. Jessie thanked her and left. He rode past the boarding house where Silas Crane was staying, saw a curtain move in an upstairs window. The detective was watching, waiting, building his case. That afternoon, a woman arrived in Elk Creek. Jessie was at the livery when she rode in. She was perhaps 35, dark-haired, dressed in traveling clothes that had seen better days. She dismounted with practiced grace and asked Tommy, the livery boy, where she might find the boarding house. Tommy pointed. The woman thanked him and walked away, leading her horse. Jessie watched her go, something nagging at him, the set of her shoulders, the way she held herself, familiar somehow. That evening, Pearl came to the ranch. Wren was teaching one of the chickens to eat from her hand. Pearl watched with a small smile that faded when she turned to Jessie. "The woman who arrived today," Pearl said. "Her name is Evelyn Marsh." Jessie went still. Marsh was Thomas Morrison's family name before he changed it to Morrison after the war. Some dispute with his father. "She is Thomas's sister," Pearl continued, "and she is asking questions about you, about Cedar Creek, about Wren." "What does she want?" Pearl's face was grim. "Revenge, I think. Her father was one of the 12 men who died at Cedar Creek. She blames you, has blamed you for 20 years. Jessie sat down on the porch steps. The net was tightening. Silas Crane investigating his past. Evelyn Marsh seeking vengeance. And somewhere the mysterious Victor Morrison pulling strings. How many more would come before this was over? The next day, Evelyn Marsh visited the ranch. Jessie saw her coming from a distance and met her in the yard, rifle in hand, but pointed at the ground. She stopped her horse 20 feet away and looked at him with eyes the same shape as Thomas's, the same color as Wren's. "Mr. Calloway," she said. "My name is Evelyn Marsh. I know who you are. Then you know why I am here, to blame me for your father's death." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, that he would be so direct. "So, my father died at Cedar Creek because you abandoned your post," she said. 12 men burned alive because you were too much of a coward to hold the line. I followed orders to retreat. Your father and Thomas Morrison convinced 11 other men to stay. That was their choice. My father was a hero. Your father was a soldier who made a decision. Good or bad, I cannot say. But it was his decision, not mine." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "You have been living with my brother's daughter, the child of the man you betrayed. I am protecting her. There is a difference." From her own family, Evelyn's voice rose. I am her aunt. I have more right to her than you do. Rights do not matter to the men who killed her mother. Safety matters, and she is safer here. Evelyn dismounted. She walked closer, her eyes searching Jesse's face. I have been looking for you for a long time, she said quietly. 20 years I have carried my father's death. 20 years of knowing the man responsible walked free. And now you found me. What do you want? An apology? Confession, blood. I want you to suffer the way my father suffered, the way my family suffered. I want you to lose everything so you understand what you took from us. Jessie met her eyes steadily. I already lost everything, Miss Marsh. 4 years ago, my wife and daughter burned to death while I was drunk in town. So if suffering is what you want, I can save you the effort. I am already in hell. Evelyn stared at him, some of the fury drained from her face, replaced by something more complicated. Good, she said finally. Then you know exactly how it feels. She turned to leave, then stopped. Where is the girl inside? I want to see her. No, she is my niece. She is a child who watched her mother die. She does not need more strangers confusing her. Evelyn's eyes hardened. This is not over, Mr. Calloway. I did not think it was. She rode away. Jessie watched until she disappeared, then went inside. Wren was sitting at the table, the diary open in front of her. You found it, Jessie said. I was looking for something to read. Wren's voice was careful. It fell open to a page about you. What did it say? That my mama knew the truth about Cedar Creek, that she knew you were innocent, that she used your guilt anyway to make you protect me. Jessie sat down across from her. Does that change anything? Should it, that is for you to decide. Wren closed the diary. My mama did what she had to do. You are doing what you have to do. I do not care about the reasons. I care that you are still here. People keep coming, Jessie said quietly. They want to hurt me or take you or both. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Then we will deal with worse. You are 8 years old. You should not have to deal with this. Wren looked at him with ancient eyes. I watched my mama bleed to death in the dirt. I can handle worse. The days began to blur together. Jesse fortified the ranch as best he could, laid tripwires along the approach roads, moved ammunition to strategic positions, taught Wren how to shoot, how to reload, how to aim for center mass if someone came through the door. She learned without complaint, understanding that survival was not optional. Silas Crane continued his investigation. Jesse heard reports from Pearl. The detective had found the drifter who had seen Jesse leaving town the night of the fire, had gotten a statement, was building a case that Jesse Calloway was an unstable veteran, a drunk, a man who had failed his own family and could not be trusted with someone else's child. The truth used as a weapon. It would be almost admirable if it were not so dangerous. Then Victor Morrison made his move. Jesse was in town buying supplies when Marshal Wade Pickett found him. The marshal's face was troubled. Jesse, I need you to come to my office. What for? Just come, please. Jesse followed him to the small building that served as jail and office both. Inside, a man was waiting. Tall, lean, expensive suit, dark hair graying at the temples, eyes like slate. Mr. Calloway, the man said, I am Victor Morrison. Jesse's hand went to his belt to the knife he kept there. Victor raised his hands, placating. I am not here to fight. I am here to talk. About what? About my niece, about the future, about finding a solution that works for everyone. The girl stays with me, Victor smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. I understand you feel responsible for her. Thomas was your friend once. You feel you owe him. But, Mr. Calloway, you cannot possibly provide what I can. Stability, education, a proper home. She has a home. You have a ranch in the middle of nowhere. You are a known alcoholic. Your own family died while you were drinking. These are facts. Jesse lunged. Pickett caught him, held him back. Victor did not flinch. The marshal has asked me to file my custody petition through proper channels, Victor continued calmly. So I am doing that. But I am also offering you an alternative. Sign over guardianship now. I will give you $10,000. You can start over somewhere, buy a new ranch. The girl comes with me, and everyone walks away whole. $10,000 for a child. For your freedom, Victor corrected. For absolution from a responsibility you never asked for. Jesse pulled free from Pickett's grip. He walked to the door, then turned back. "If you take her," he said quietly, "I will hunt you across this territory. I will find you, and I will kill you." Victor's smile widened. "There it is, the violent veteran, the unstable drunk. Thank you for making my case for me." Jesse left before he did something that would prove Victor right. That night he sat with Wren on the porch. She was quiet, sensing his mood. Finally she spoke. "The man in town today? That was my uncle, yes. What did he want you?" Wren nodded as if she had expected this. "Will he take me?" "Not if I can help it. What if you cannot help it? What if the law says I have to go?" Jesse looked at her. "Then we will go somewhere the law does not reach. Running, surviving." Wren considered this. "My mama ran for months. It did not save her. Your mother was running alone. You have me now. For how long until the next person comes, until you decide the cost is too high?" Jesse turned to face her fully. "I am going to tell you something I have never told anyone. When my daughter died, I wanted to die with her. For 2 years I tried to drink myself into the grave, but I was too much of a coward even for that. Then you showed up, and suddenly I had a reason to wake up that was not just habit. You want to know how long I will stay until they bury me. That is how long." Wren's eyes were bright with tears she would not shed. "People say things, I know, but I mean it. How do I know? Because I am still here, because I have had a dozen chances to walk away, and I have taken none of them. Because you are the only thing standing between me and the darkness, and I am not ready to go into the darkness alone." They sat in silence as the stars emerged. Somewhere an owl called. The night was cool and clean and perfect. Jesse wanted to hold on to this moment, wanted to preserve it against whatever came next. But moments could not be preserved. They could only be experienced and then lost. The next morning, Evelyn Marsh came back. Jesse was repairing fence when he saw her riding toward the ranch. He set down his tools and waited. She dismounted and approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "I owe you an apology," she said without preamble. Jesse said nothing. "I came here for revenge," Evelyn continued. "I wanted to hurt you the way my father's death hurt me. But I have been watching you with Wren. I have been asking questions around town, and I think I was wrong about you. What changed your mind? I found letters, my father's letters, hidden in my mother's things after she died. He wrote about Cedar Creek, about his decision to stay, about convincing others to stay. He knew it was wrong. He knew they would likely die, but he thought it was heroic. Thought history would remember him as a man who stood his ground. Jesse felt something in his chest loosen. "Your father wrote this?" Evelyn pulled papers from her coat. "Read them yourself." Jesse read letter after letter, written in the weeks before Cedar Creek, planning, strategizing, convincing other men that retreat was cowardice, that dying was preferable to living with shame. And at the end, a letter to Evelyn's mother never sent. "If I die at Cedar Creek, tell everyone it was Jesse Calloway's fault. Tell them he abandoned us. I cannot let my children know I chose death over them. Let them hate him instead of me." Jesse folded the letters carefully. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because Thomas Morrison did the same thing to you that my father did to me. He made you carry his shame, and I cannot punish you for a crime you did not commit." "What do you want?" Evelyn looked toward the house where Wren was watching from the window. "I want to help. Victor Morrison is dangerous. He killed Thomas. I am certain of it. Made it look like the drink did it. And he will kill Wren if it gets him that mining claim. You cannot fight him alone. I am not alone. I have Wren." Evelyn almost smiled. "Yes, I can see that you do. But you need allies. Let me be one." "Why would you do that?" "Because my father's last act was to destroy your life with lies. Let my last act be to save it with truth." Jesse studied her face, saw sincerity there, saw regret, saw something that might become redemption if given the chance. "All right," he said. "But if you betray us, I will not hesitate. I would not expect you to." That evening, the three of them sat at Jesse's table. Wren watched Evelyn with cautious interest. Evelyn looked at her niece with barely concealed grief. "You have your mother's eyes," Evelyn said softly. I have my father's eyes, Wren corrected. Mama said so. Then you have the Morrison eyes. My father had them. Thomas had them. Now you. Why did you hate Jessie? Evelyn did not flinch from the question. Because it was easier than admitting my father made a mistake. Easier to blame someone else than accept that the people we love can be wrong. Were you wrong? Yes. And I am sorry for that. Wren nodded. Okay. Just like that, my mama used to say holding on to hate was like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I do not want to be poisoned. Evelyn's eyes filled. Your mother was a wise woman. They spent hours planning. Evelyn had information. Victor had been in Elk Creek for 3 weeks longer than anyone knew. He had bought the boarding house, had bought interests in several businesses, was building a power base. He is not just after the mining claim, Evelyn said. He is after legitimacy, respectability. Wren is the key to both. If he has guardianship, he controls the claim legally. And he looks like a caring uncle instead of what he really is, which is what Jessie asked, a murderer who is very good at looking civilized. The next week, Victor filed his petition with the territorial court. Judge Whitmore would hear the case in 30 days. Evelyn testified that she supported Jessie's guardianship, that her family's accusations against him had been false. Pearl gathered signatures from townspeople who had seen Jessie with Wren, who believed he was fit. But half the town believed Victor's version, the wealthy businessman versus the broken drunk, the respectable citizen versus the haunted veteran. It was an easy narrative to accept. Marshal Pickett came to the ranch one evening. His face was troubled. Victor has filed additional charges, he said. Child endangerment. Says you are teaching Wren to shoot. Says you have her living in an armed camp. She needs to know how to protect herself. That is not how the court will see it. Then the court is wrong, Pickett sighed. Jessie, I am on your side. But you are making this hard. Every time you do something that looks unstable, you prove Victor's point. What should I do? Send her to school where someone can grab her, let her walk around unarmed when killers are looking for her. I do not know. I am just telling you how this looks. After Pickett left, Jessie sat on the porch with his head in his hands. Wren came and sat beside him. We are going to lose, she said quietly. The court will give me to him. No, yes, I can see it happening. Everyone can. Then we will run. Tonight, if we have to. Wren shook her head. Running did not save my mama. It will not save us. What do you want me to do? Fight, but fight smart, not just with guns and anger, with truth. The answer eludes me. What truth will help us? Then we need to find it. That night, Jessie could not sleep. He sat in the yard looking at the stars, thinking about Hannah and Lily, about Cedar Creek, about all the ways he had failed and all the ways he was trying not to fail again. Wren came out and sat beside him. Neither spoke for a long time. Just sat together in the darkness, two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole. Finally, Wren said, Tell me about them, your wife and daughter. Jessie was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Then he began to speak. Hannah was from Pennsylvania. I met her after the war. She saw something in me that I could not see in myself, something worth saving. We married in the spring of '66. Lily came 3 years later. What was Lily like? Jessie's voice cracked. She laughed at everything. Birds, clouds, her own feet. The world was hilarious to her. She made Hannah laugh, made me laugh, made everything lighter just by existing. He stopped. Wren waited. I was in town the night they died, October 19th, 8 years after Cedar Creek. I got drunk because I could not stand to be sober on that date, could not stand to remember. And while I was drowning myself in whiskey, the barn caught fire. They were inside. By the time I got home, it was too late. His hands were shaking. Wren took one of them in both of hers. Hannah died trying to save Lily. But the smoke got her first. I found them together. Hannah was holding her. Even in death, she was protecting our daughter. And I had not been there. I had chosen my grief over my family, and it killed them. That is not your fault. It is exactly my fault. No. Wren's voice was fierce. Fire is fire. You did not light it. You did not choose for it to happen. You were just not there. That is guilt, but it is not fault. There is a difference. Jessie looked at her, 8 years old, and she understood things he had spent 4 years trying to comprehend. How are you so smart? He asked. I am not smart. I just know that if we blame ourselves for everything we cannot control, we will never have room to fix the things we can." They sat together until dawn, and when the sun rose, Jesse felt something shift inside him. Not absolution, not forgiveness, just the smallest possibility that maybe Wren was right. That maybe there was a difference between guilt and fault. That maybe he could carry one without being crushed by the other. 2 weeks before the hearing, Silas Crane made his final play. He came to the ranch in daylight, bold as brass. Jesse met him in the yard with rifle in hand. Crane held up empty palms. "I am not here to fight Mr. Calloway, just to deliver a message. Deliver it and leave." Crane pulled an envelope from his coat. Inside were documents, witness statements from Cedar Creek, death certificates, medical examiner reports on Hannah and Lily, and at the bottom a sworn affidavit from the drifter who saw Jesse in town the night of the fire. Jesse read them all, each one a nail in his coffin, each one true. Victor Morrison is prepared to present all of this in court. Crane said, "Your record as a coward, your record as a drunk, your record as a man who could not protect his own family." "How do you think that will play to a judge?" Jesse looked up from the papers. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Mr. Morrison is offering you one final chance. Sign over guardianship. Take $20,000. Walk away. Or he destroys you in court and takes the girl anyway." Jesse tore the papers in half. "Tell Morrison I will see him in court." Crane shrugged. "Your funeral." After he left, Jesse sat on the porch steps, his head spinning. Everything Crane said was true. The court would hear about Cedar Creek, about the fire, about his drinking, and they would side with Victor. How could they not? Wren came out and sat beside him. She had heard everything. "Do you want to give up?" she asked. "No? Then do not. We fight until we cannot fight any more. Then we fight anyway. You are so certain. I am certain of you. That is enough." Jesse pulled her close. She leaned against him, and they sat that way as the day faded into evening, two people against the world. It should have felt hopeless. Instead, it felt like the only real thing Jesse had ever known. That night, Jesse finally broke. He had been holding everything together through sheer will, but will had limits, and his had finally run out. He walked to the graves on the hill, Wren following at a distance. When he reached Hannah's headstone, he fell to his knees. "I am sorry," he said to the dead. "I am so sorry. I left you. I left all of them. I keep leaving everyone who needs me. I do not know how to stop. I do not know how to be the man you thought I was." He wept. Great tearing sobs that shook his whole body. 4 years of grief pouring out all at once. Wren stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder, saying nothing, just being there. When Jesse finally stopped, when he had nothing left, he looked up to find Wren watching him with those ancient eyes. "My daddy used to do this," she said quietly. "Get drunk and cry and say he was a coward. Say Cedar Creek haunted him. He said 12 men died and he lived and he did not know why. He carried it until the drink killed him." Jesse looked at her stunned. "Thomas said that every night, until Mama made him sleep in the barn because I could not stand hearing it anymore." Wren knelt beside him. "Mama said guilt is slower than a bullet but just as deadly. She said Daddy blamed you because it was easier than blaming himself. And then he drank to forget he was lying, and the drink killed him anyway." She pulled something from her pocket, a letter folded small, the paper worn soft from being carried. "Daddy wrote this before he died. Mama gave it to me, said I should read it when I was old enough to understand." Jesse took the letter with shaking hands. It was addressed to Wren in Thomas Morrison's handwriting. "Baby girl, if you are reading this, I am gone. I want you to know your daddy was not a good man. I did terrible things in the war. Cedar Creek, I was there. Jesse Calloway did order retreat, but he was right. We were outnumbered. I stayed behind because I was trying to be a hero. 12 men died because I convinced them to stay. Not because Jesse left. I blamed him for years because it was easier than blaming myself. If Mama brings you to Jesse, trust him. He is a better man than I ever was. I am sorry I could not be the father you deserved. Maybe Jesse can be. Your loving but foolish Daddy Thomas." Jesse read it 3 times. Each time the words rearranged his understanding of the last 12 years. Thomas had known the truth all along, and he had lied anyway. Had destroyed Jesse's reputation to protect his own, and then at the end had tried to make amends by sending his daughter to the man he had wronged. Redemption and betrayal wrapped together so tightly they could not be separated. Wren watched him process this. "When will you tell people?" she asked. "Tell them what?" "The truth. That you were innocent, that my father lied." Jesse folded the letter carefully. "I will not." "Why not?" "Because it does not matter anymore. Cedar Creek happened 12 years ago. The truth will not bring those men back, will not undo what your father did, will just create new pain for people who have already suffered enough. But you have been suffering for nothing. Not for nothing." Jesse looked at the graves. "I was not at Cedar Creek. But I was not here when Hannah and Lily died. That guilt is real. That failure is mine, and I have to carry it. You did not start the fire." "No, but I was not there to stop it, not there to save them. That is on me." Wren took his hand. "Then carry it, but carry it knowing you are trying, that you are here now, that you chose to stay when you could have run." Jesse pulled her into a hug. She wrapped her small arms around him and held on tight. "I am scared," she whispered. "I am scared the court will take me. I am scared I will lose you the way I lost Mama and Daddy. I am scared of everything." Jesse held her tighter. "I am scared too. But we are scared together. That has to count for something." They walked back to the ranch in darkness. Behind them, the graves stood silent. The dead offering no answers, no absolution, no comfort. Just the endless weight of their absence. But ahead, the ranch waited. Lights in the windows, warmth inside. A place that had become against all odds a home. And that night, for the first time in 4 years, Jesse Calloway slept without nightmares. Not because the ghosts were gone, but because he had finally stopped running from them. The letter from Arthur Grimes arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a writer from Casper who looked half dead from the journey. Jesse read it standing in the yard while Wren fed the chickens. The lawyer's words were blunt and pessimistic in equal measure. "Mr. Calloway, I must be frank. Victor Morrison has constructed a formidable case. Your military record, while honorable on paper, has been tainted by testimony regarding Cedar Creek. The circumstances of your family's death paint a picture of negligence. Your isolated lifestyle suggests instability. Even with character witnesses, the court will likely favor blood relation over guardianship by a stranger. I recommend we negotiate a settlement. Perhaps supervised visitation rights, signed Arthur Grimes, attorney at law." Jesse folded the letter and put it in his pocket. Wren appeared at his elbow, holding an egg still warm from the nest. "Bad news?" she asked. "The lawyer thinks we will lose." "Do you think we will lose?" Jesse looked at her. 8 years old, with dirt on her face and chicken feed in her hair and eyes that had seen too much death. He thought about lying, decided against it, probably. Wren nodded once, accepting this. "Then what do? We go to court anyway. We tell the truth. And we see what happens. That is not much of a plan. It is the only plan I have." That night, Victor Morrison came to the ranch. Jesse heard the horse approaching in darkness and met him in the yard with rifle raised. Victor sat his mount calmly, hands visible on the pommel, no weapon drawn. The moon was nearly full, turning everything silver and strange. "I came alone," Victor said. "Unarmed. I want to talk. We have nothing to talk about. I think we do." Victor dismounted slowly, keeping his movements careful and deliberate. He was older than Jesse had expected, maybe 50, with the kind of weathered elegance that came from money applied to aging. His suit was expensive, even covered in trail dust. "You can shoot me if you want," Victor said, "but I would prefer you hear me out first. Talk fast." Victor looked toward the cabin where lamplight glowed in the windows. "I know what you think of me, greedy uncle. Villain pursuing orphan for money. The role has been assigned, and I have played it well enough. But the truth is more complicated. Truth usually is. Thomas was my younger brother, smarter, braver, better in every way that mattered. Our father loved him more. Our mother loved him more. I spent my whole life being the other Morrison, the one who was not Thomas." Jesse said nothing. "Let Victor talk." When Thomas died, something in me broke. Not grief, exactly, more like relief. Finally, I would not be compared. Finally, I could be my own man. Then I found out about the mining claim, about Wren. And I thought, here is my chance. Thomas's legacy. I could take it, control it, prove I was worth something. You want me to feel sorry for you? Victor shook his head. I want you to understand. I have spent 3 weeks in this territory. I have watched you with her, watched how she looks at you, how you look at her, and I see something I never had with Thomas, something real. Jesse's grip tightened on the rifle. Get to the point. Victor pulled papers from his coat. I am prepared to offer you $50,000 and the mining claim. Sign these papers. Transfer guardianship to me. Take the money. Wren gets her inheritance when she turns 18. You get to start over. Everyone wins, except Wren. She will have opportunities, education, society, things you cannot provide. She will have a man who sees her as a transaction. Jesse lowered the rifle slightly. The answer is no. Think about it. $50,000. That ranch you dream of. New stock. New life. Freedom from this responsibility you never asked for. I said no. Victor stepped closer. His voice dropped. I killed Thomas. The words hung in the night air like smoke. Jesse went very still. It was not obvious, Victor continued. I just kept him supplied with whiskey. Good whiskey. Expensive whiskey. Watched him drink himself to death over 6 months. Easier than a bullet. Cleaner. And when he finally died, I felt nothing. No guilt, no remorse, just satisfaction that I had finally won. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know what I am capable of. I killed my own brother. What do you think I will do to you if you get in my way? Jesse raised the rifle again, aimed at Victor's chest. Get off my land, Victor smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. I tried being reasonable. Remember that. When this gets ugly, remember I offered you a way out. He mounted and rode into the darkness. Jesse stood in the yard for a long time after listening to hoofbeats fade. Inside, Wren watched from the window. When Jesse came in, she was sitting at the table with her hands folded. He killed my father, she said. It was not a question. Yes. What are you going to do? Jesse sat down across from her. Nothing. Nothing. If I kill him, you lose me to the law. If I report what he said, it is my word against his, and I have no proof. We stay the course. We fight in court. We trust that the truth matters. Wren looked at him for a long time. You are a better man than I thought. I am not a good man at all. I am just trying to be less terrible. The week before the trial, Pearl organized a gathering at her store. 14 people came, ranchers, townspeople, even Dr. Crawford with his laudanum eyes and steady hands. They signed papers stating Jesse's character, stating they had seen him with Wren, stating they believed he was fit. It was not much, but it was something. Evelyn Marsh arrived the day before the hearing. She had been gathering evidence in Kansas City following Victor's trail. What she found made Jesse's blood run cold. 3 women, Evelyn said, spreading photographs on Jesse's table. 3 women Victor courted over the last 10 years, all wealthy, all died in accidents shortly after their deaths, would benefit him. Falls, drownings, a fire. You can prove this not in court, but I can plant the seed. Make the judge wonder. That night, Jesse could not sleep. He walked to the creek where he and Wren had sat weeks before. The water moved over stones, making sounds like whispered conversations. He thought about Hannah, about Lily, about all the ways he had failed them. Wren found him there an hour later. She sat beside him without speaking. They watched the water together in silence that stretched for minutes. No words, just presence. The sound of the creek and the wind in the grass, and 2 people trying to figure out how to survive what was coming. Finally, Wren spoke. Do you think my mama knew that it would be this hard? Jesse considered. Yes, she knew. Why did she do it anyway? Because some things are worth the hard. You are worth the hard. More silence. An owl called from the cottonwoods. The moon climbed higher. Jesse Wren said quietly, I am scared I will forget her. My mama. Her face is already getting blurry. Jesse put his arm around her small shoulders. We will not let you forget. We will talk about her every day. We will keep her alive in stories. Will you tell me about Hannah and Lily too? Yes. Promise, I promise. They sat until the stars wheeled overhead and the night grew cold. Then they walked back to the ranch together, two broken people holding on to each other because it was all they had. The morning of the trial dawned clear and merciless. Jesse, dressed in his one good suit, brushed his hat, checked his appearance in the cracked mirror. He looked like what he was, a man who had been to war and never quite made it home. Wren wore a dress Pearl had made, simple blue cotton with white buttons. Her red hair was braided tight. She looked small and fierce and terrified. "Ready?" Jesse asked. "No, but we are going anyway." The church hall was full when they arrived, every pew packed, people standing along the walls. Jesse had not realized so many people cared about the outcome, or maybe they just wanted to watch the spectacle. Judge Cornelius Whitmore sat behind a table at the front. He was older than Jesse expected, 70 at least, with white hair and eyes that missed nothing. He wore a black coat despite the heat, and held a Bible in one gnarled hand. Victor Morrison sat on the left side with two lawyers in expensive suits. Silas Crane sat behind them taking notes. Victor looked calm and confident, a man who had already won and was just waiting for the formality. Jesse sat on the right with Wren Pearl and Arthur Grimes. Grimes looked like he had slept in his clothes, which he probably had. He adjusted his crooked spectacles and whispered to Jesse, "Do not speak unless I tell you. Do not react to anything Morrison's lawyers say. And for God's sake, do not clench your fists where the judge can see." Jesse unclenched his fists. Judge Whitmore struck his gavel once. The room fell silent. "This hearing will come to order. Case of Morrison versus Calloway. Custody of the minor child Wren Morrison. Mr. Quaid, you may present." Victor's lead lawyer stood, Harlan Quaid, silver-haired and smooth-voiced. He looked like he had been born in a courtroom. "Your Honor, this case is straightforward. My client Victor Morrison is the biological uncle of the child in question. He is her closest living blood relative. Under Territorial Law Section 14 of the Custody and Guardianship Act, Mr. Morrison has rightful and immediate claim." Quaid paused for effect. "Mr. Calloway is by accounts a decent man in some respects. But decency is not legal standing. He has no blood relation, no formal guardianship. He is a bachelor, living in isolation, with a history of alcoholism and mental instability stemming from wartime service." Jesse felt Wren's hand tighten on his arm. He covered it with his own and kept his face still. Furthermore, Quaid continued, Mr. Calloway's own family perished in a fire while he was absent from his ranch. This raises serious questions about his ability to protect a child in his care. My client offers stability, resources, and, most importantly, family. Blood matters, Your Honor. It is the foundation of our legal system." Quaid sat down. Victor nodded once satisfied. Judge Whitmore turned to Grimes, counsel for the respondent. Grimes stood. He was shorter than Quaid, rumpled where Quaid was pressed, but his voice was steady. "Your Honor, I will not dispute the law. Section 14 is clear. But the law also provides exception when the blood claimant's interest is not in the welfare of the child but in exploitation of the child's assets." Grimes held up Nora's mining claim certificate. "The child's mother possessed valuable mining rights in Colorado Territory. I intend to demonstrate that, Mr. Victor Morrison's claim is motivated entirely by financial interest in these assets. That he sees the child not as family, but as a key to wealth." Quaid was on his feet. "Objection. Speculation. It is evidence," Grimes said. "And I have documentation." Judge Whitmore held up a hand. "I will hear the evidence. Sit down, Mr. Quaid." Grimes called Pearl Hutchkins first. She walked to the front and sat in the witness chair, back straight, hands folded. A woman who had raised 6 children alone and would not be intimidated by lawyers. "Mrs. Hutchkins," Grimes said, "how long have you known Jesse Calloway?" 11 years. He came to Elk Creek after the war. Quiet man. Lost his wife and daughter 4 years ago. Near about lost himself right along with them. How would you describe his care of the child? Wren Pearl looked directly at the judge. "Best thing I have seen a man do. He found that girl half dead beside her mother's body, carried her home, fed her, clothed her, taught her to survive. That child was a ghost when he brought her in. Now she is alive again. That is not accident. That is love." "Thank you, Mrs. Hutchkins." Quaid stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Hutchins, is Mr. Calloway a relative of the child number? Does he have legal documentation of guardianship? He has her trust. That is worth more than paper. I asked about documentation, ma'am, and I answered you, just not the way you wanted. A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Judge Whitmore allowed himself the ghost of a smile. Dr. Crawford testified next, described Wren's condition when Jessie brought her in: severe dehydration, malnutrition, psychological trauma, and her condition now: healthy, gaining weight, beginning to heal. In your medical opinion, what caused this improvement? Grimes asked. Jessie Calloway. Plain and simple. That child was dying. He brought her back. Quaid attacked on cross. Doctor, have you consumed laudanum in the past 24 hours? The room went quiet. Crawford's face reddened. My personal habits have no bearing on my professional judgment. The witness's credibility is in question if he is testifying under the influence. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. Dr. Crawford, answer the question. Crawford straightened. I take laudanum for a war wound, Your Honor. Shrapnel from Antietam. It does not impair my judgment and never has. Move on, mister. Quaid, the judge said. But the damage was done. Jessie saw it in faces around the room. Doubt planted like seeds. Marshal Pickett testified about the night Nora died, about finding the wagon, about the knife wound, about his investigation into Victor Morrison's activities. And what did you find? Grimes asked. That Mr. Morrison has been in Elk Creek longer than he claimed, that he purchased property under false names, that he has been building influence in preparation for this hearing. Speculation, Quaid said from his seat. Facts, Pickett countered. I have deeds, I have witnesses, then produce them. Pickett hesitated. Some of my witnesses are afraid to testify. Mr. Morrison has made it clear there would be consequences, hearsay, Quaid said. Judge Whitmore rubbed his eyes. This is a custody hearing, not a criminal trial. Let us focus on the child's welfare. Grimes called Evelyn Marsh. She walked to the front slowly, her dark dress making her look like a shadow. She sat and folded her hands in her lap. When she looked at Victor, something cold moved behind her eyes. Miss Marsh, Grimes said, You are the sister of Thomas Morrison, deceased. Is that correct? Yes. And what is your relationship to the child, Wren? She is my niece. Do you support Mr. Victor Morrison's petition for custody? Evelyn was silent for a long moment. Then she said clearly, No, I do not. Victor's face went dark. Quaid was on his feet. Your Honor, this witness is hostile to my client. This witness is family to the child, Grimes said. Her opinion matters. Judge Whitmore waved Quaid down. Continue, Miss Marsh. Evelyn took a breath. I came to Elk Creek seeking revenge against Jessie Calloway. My father died at Cedar Creek, and I blamed Mr. Calloway for 12 years. I wanted him to suffer, but I was wrong. She pulled papers from her bag. These are letters from my father written before Cedar Creek. They prove Jessie Calloway was not responsible for those deaths. My father made choices that led to tragedy. He then blamed Mr. Calloway to avoid his own guilt. The room erupted in whispers. Jessie sat very still. This was news to most people, news that should have vindicated him. Instead, he just felt tired. Furthermore, Evelyn continued, I have investigated Victor Morrison's history. 3 women he courted died in accidents after becoming involved with him. I cannot prove murder. But the pattern is troubling. Objection, Quaid shouted. This is character assassination with no evidence. It is context, Grimes said, and the judge should hear it. Whitmore considered. I will allow it for now, but tread carefully, Miss Marsh. Evelyn looked directly at Victor. My brother Thomas died of drink, but Victor provided that drink, encouraged it, profited from it. I believe Victor killed Thomas as surely as if he had used a knife, and I will not let him profit from my niece. Victor stood suddenly. That is a lie. Sit down, Mr. Morrison, the judge said. She has no proof, no evidence. Just bitter accusations. Sit down, or I will hold you in contempt. Victor sat, but his hands were shaking, his composure cracking. Grimes called 2 more witnesses, ranchers who had seen Jessie with Wren, who testified to his care, his dedication, his transformation from isolated hermit to engaged guardian. Then it was Victor's turn. Quaid called character witnesses for Victor, businessmen from Kansas City, a banker, a minister. All testified to Victor's standing, his wealth, his respectability, his desire to do right by his niece. Then Quaid called Silas Crane. The detective took the stand and produced his evidence. Documents about Cedar Creek, testimony from soldiers who survived, all painting Jesse as a coward who abandoned his men. Then Crane presented the real damage, witness statements from the night Hannah and Lily died. The drifter who saw Jesse leaving town drunk, the bartender who served him. The timeline showing Jesse was miles away when the fire started. Mr. Calloway has a pattern, Crane said. At Cedar Creek, he was not there when his men needed him. The night his family died, he was not there when they needed him. And now he asks this court to trust him with another man's child. How many times must he fail before we stop giving him chances? Jesse felt the weight of every eye in the room, felt the judgment, felt the truth of it settling on his shoulders like a yoke. When Crane finished, Grimes stood. He looked at Jesse. This was the moment, the decision they had discussed. Jesse could stay silent, let Grimes defend him with technical arguments, or he could testify, tell the whole truth, risk everything on honesty. Jesse nodded once. Grimes called Jesse Calloway to the stand. Jesse walked to the front of the room. Every step felt like walking through deep water. He sat in the chair and looked out at the assembled faces, saw judgment, saw curiosity, saw Wren watching him with those ancient eyes. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. Mr. Calloway, you understand you are under oath. I do. Grimes stood. Mr. Calloway, why should this court grant you guardianship of Wren Morrison? Jesse looked at Grimes, then at the judge, then at the room full of people waiting for him to justify his existence. I should not, he said. The room went silent. Even Grimes looked shocked. Jesse continued, I am not a good man. I have made mistakes that haunt me every waking hour. Cedar Creek, the night my family died. I carry weight that will never lift. I am probably the last person who should raise a child. Then why are you here? The judge asked. Jesse met Whitmore's eyes. Because Wren's mother thought differently. Nora Morrison knew everything about me, my failures, my cowardice, my ghosts, and she still brought her daughter to me. Not because I am capable, because I am broken. He paused. Broken people understand how fragile life is, how precious, how easily it can be taken. I cannot promise Wren a perfect life. I cannot promise I will not make mistakes. But I can promise I will be there every single day. When she wakes screaming from nightmares about finding her mother dead, I will be there because I know those nightmares. When the world feels cruel and impossible, I will be there because I know that feeling. Jesse's voice broke. Thomas Morrison and I survived hell together, different versions of the same war. He trusted me with his daughter's life. Not because I am worthy, because I am all she has, and she is all I have. That is not redemption. That is just two broken people trying not to be broken alone. He stopped. The silence in the room was complete. Jesse looked at Wren. She was crying, silent tears running down her face, but she was smiling. Thank you, Mr. Calloway, Judge Whitmore said quietly. Quaid stood for cross-examination. Mr. Calloway, you admit you were not present when your wife and daughter died? Yes. You were drunk in town. Yes, so you failed them. Jesse met Quaid's eyes. Yes, I failed them. And you failed at Cedar Creek. I followed orders. But yes, in the ways that matter, I failed. So you have a pattern of failure. Why should we trust you not to fail again? Jesse was quiet for a long time. Then he said, because I have already failed at everything that mattered. I have nothing left to lose except her, and I will not survive losing her. That is not nobility. That is just desperation. But it is real. Quaid had no response to that. He sat down. Judge Whitmore looked at Jesse. You may step down. Jesse returned to his seat. Wren took his hand and held it tight. Then Grimes stood. Your Honor, I would like to call Wren Morrison. Victor's lawyers objected. The child is 8 years old. Her testimony cannot be considered reliable. The child is the subject of this hearing, Judge Whitmore said. I will hear her if she wishes to speak. The judge looked at Wren. Young lady, would you like to come up here? Wren looked at Jesse. He saw the fear in her eyes, saw her fighting it. He leaned close and whispered, You do not have to. "Yes, I do," she whispered back. She stood, walked to the front, climbed into the chair. Her feet did not touch the floor. She looked impossibly small sitting there, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. "What is your name, child?" the judge asked. "Wren Morrison. My real name is longer, but nobody uses it." "Do you understand what is happening here today?" "Yes, sir. That man wants to take me away from Jesse. He is my uncle, but I never met him until he came here. My mama never talked about him except to say he was dangerous, and we had to stay away." "And Mr. Calloway? How do you know him?" Wren looked at Jesse. "He found me when I was dying. He carried me to his house. He buried my mama under a tree and carved her name, real careful. He taught me to ride, and he feeds me every morning, and he sits on the porch with a rifle every night to make sure nothing hurts me. Does he treat you well? He treats me like I matter. Nobody ever did that before, except Mama." The judge leaned forward. "Do you want to go with your uncle, Wren?" Wren turned and looked at Victor Morrison. Jesse watched her face, watched the fear drain away, watched something fierce take its place. "My mama ran 1,000 miles to get away from that family," Wren said. Her voice was rising. "She died on the road trying to keep me safe from them. If you send me back, you are throwing away everything she died for." The room was dead silent. "I am not a piece of paper," Wren continued. "I am not a mining claim. I am not property. I am a person. And I choose my papa. I choose Jesse Calloway. He chose me when nobody else would. When I was sitting beside my dead mama in the dirt and the whole world forgot I existed, he got off his horse and he knelt down and he took my hand and he said, 'I am here now.' And he has been here every day since." Tears were streaming down her face, but her voice did not waver. "Do not I get to choose? Do not I matter?" Judge Whitmore looked at Wren for a long time. Then he looked at Victor, then at Jesse. He picked up his gavel but did not strike it. "I am going to recess for 1 hour," he said. "When I return, I will deliver my ruling." The hour was the longest of Jesse's life. He sat outside the church hall with Wren on a bench under a cottonwood. Pearl brought them water. Grimes paced. Evelyn stood apart watching Victor through the window. Victor sat alone on the opposite side of the hall. His lawyers had abandoned him, sensing the tide turning. Silas Crane was gone. Victor sat with his head in his hands, looking older than his years. "What if he says no?" Wren whispered. Jesse pulled her close. "Then we figure it out. That is what you always say, because it is always true. What if figuring it out is not enough? Then I will carry you out of here, and we will ride until we find some place where it is enough. You would do that. I would do anything for you, Wren." He said it with such certainty that she believed him. She looked up at him and smiled through her tears. "I know," she said quietly. "I know you would." They sat until the church bell rang. Time to go back inside. Time to hear their fate. Judge Whitmore returned and settled into his chair. He put on his spectacles and opened a leather folder. He read for what felt like hours. Finally he looked up. "I have considered the evidence. I have heard the witnesses. I have read Mrs. Morrison's letters and heard Miss Marsh's testimony, and I have heard from the child herself." He paused. "Section 14 of the Custody and Guardianship Act grants priority to blood relations. That is the law, and I am bound to uphold it." Jesse's stomach turned to ice. Wren's fingers dug into his shirt. "However," the judge continued, "the same act provides exception when the court determines the blood claimant's interest is not in the welfare of the child. The evidence before me paints a clear picture of a man whose interest is financial, not familial." Victor stood. "Your Honor." "Sit down, Mr. Morrison. I am not finished." Victor sat. His face was ash. Furthermore, Judge Whitmore said, "This court has heard testimony from a physician, a federal marshal, a storekeeper, and members of this community. All attest to Mr. Calloway's character and his care of this child. I have also heard from the child herself. She expressed her preference with a clarity that many adults would do well to emulate." The judge looked directly at Victor. "Mr. Morrison, your petition for custody is denied. I find your claim motivated by financial interest in the Morrison mining rights and not by genuine concern for the child's welfare." The room began to stir. Whitmore raised his hand. "I am not finished." "Mr. Calloway." Jesse stood. Wren slid off his lap and stood beside him. This court grants you temporary legal guardianship of Wren Morrison, effective immediately. You will file formal adoption papers within 60 days through the Territorial Court in Casper. Failure to do so will result in reopening this case. I will file them tomorrow, Your Honor. I believe you will. Additionally, the mining claim registered to Nora Morrison will be held in trust for the child until she reaches age 18, administered by this court. No individual, including Mr. Calloway, will have access. Is that understood? Yes, sir? Mr. Morrison? The judge's voice went cold. I am referring the matter of your brother's death to the federal marshal for investigation. I suggest you leave Elk Creek today. If I learn you have contacted this child or her guardian, I will issue a warrant. Victor said nothing. His jaw worked. His hands trembled. Am I clear, Mr. Morrison? Clear, Victor said through his teeth. Whitmore brought down the gavel. One strike. Final. This hearing is adjourned. The room erupted. Pearl grabbed Jesse and held him. Grimes shook his hand. Wren threw her arms around Jesse's waist and sobbed. Not quiet, hidden crying, but full, loud, messy crying of a child who had just been told she could keep her father. Jesse picked her up. She wrapped her arms around his neck and her legs around his waist and cried into his shoulder. His own tears fell into her red hair, and he did not care who saw. Papa, she said through the sobs. Papa, Papa, I am here. Right here. We won. We won, Wren, for real. Forever. For real, forever. Victor Morrison stood. He looked at Wren, at Jesse. Something moved behind his eyes. Not anger, something more complicated. He walked toward them. Pearl moved to intercept, but Victor held up his hands. Stop, he said to the room. Just stop. Everyone froze. Victor stood in front of Jesse and Wren. Up close he looked exhausted, defeated, human. I do not want the girl, he said quietly. I never wanted her. Thomas sent me a letter before he died. Told me about the mining rights. Told me Nora was running. I thought if I got Wren I could finally have something Thomas had. He always had more. More courage, more love, more everything. Victor's voice broke. But this, watching you people fight over her like she is worth dying for. I never had that. Nobody ever fought for me. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. Mr. Morrison, are you withdrawing your petition? Victor looked at Wren one more time. Yes. Keep the girl. Keep the money. Keep everything. He walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The room was silent. Then Pearl laughed. It was a big sound that filled the space and broke the tension. Others joined, not cruel laughter. Relief. Joy. The sound of people who had witnessed something impossible and lived to tell about it. Jesse carried Wren outside. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and purple. They stood in the churchyard while people filed past offering congratulations, touching Wren's hair, shaking Jesse's hand. Finally, they were alone except for Evelyn. She approached slowly. Thank you, Jesse said. Evelyn looked at Wren, then at Jesse. I spent 20 years hating you for something you did not do. The least I could do was tell the truth when it mattered. What will you do now? Go home, make peace with my father's memory, try to be better than the hate I carried. Wren reached out and took Evelyn's hand. Thank you for saving us. Evelyn's eyes filled. You saved yourselves. I just helped. She mounted her horse and rode away into the gathering dark. Jesse and Wren walked to where Dutch was tied. They rode home slowly, neither speaking, just feeling the weight lift, the impossible victory settle into reality. When they reached the ranch, Wren slid down from the saddle and stood in the yard looking at the cabin. Lights glowed in the windows. Chickens scratched in the dirt. Everything was exactly as they had left it, but different too, because now it was permanent. Now it was home. Jesse unsaddled Dutch and turned her into the corral. When he turned around, Wren was holding his hand. Papa, she said, testing the word, making it real. Right here. I just wanted to say it. Say it any time. They went inside. Jesse made supper, cornbread and beans. Wren set the table. They ate together in comfortable silence. When they finished, Wren looked at him seriously. What happens now? Now we live. We figure out how to be a family. We make mistakes and fix them. We keep going. Just like that. Just like that. That night, Jesse sat on the porch while Wren slept. The stars were thick overhead. The air was cool and clean. Everything was perfect and terrifying because now he had something to lose again. A week later, the letter arrived. It came from the Confederate Veterans Bureau in Richmond. Jesse opened it standing in the yard. Wren was feeding chickens. He read it 3 times before the words made sense. Dear Mr. Calloway, following an investigation into the events of October 1864 at Cedar Creek, this Bureau has reviewed testimony from surviving witnesses and battlefield records. We find that your order to retreat was tactically sound and likely saved numerous lives. The decision by Lieutenant Thomas Morrison and others to remain was made against orders. You are hereby cleared of any wrongdoing. Furthermore, we wish to recognize your service with a commendation for leadership under fire. Signed, Bureau of Confederate Military Records. Jesse folded the letter slowly. 12 years. 12 years of carrying guilt that was never his to carry. 12 years of believing he was responsible for 12 deaths. And now official recognition that he had been right all along. He should have felt relief, vindication. Instead, he just felt hollow, because Cedar Creek had been a lie. But Hannah and Lily were real. He had not been there when they needed him. That guilt remained. That weight stayed. Wren appeared at his elbow. What is it? Jesse showed her the letter. She read it carefully, then looked up at him. You are not happy. Number. Why not? Because this clears Cedar Creek, but it does not change anything that matters. I still was not there when my family died. I still carry that. Wren took the letter from his hand. She walked to the stove and opened it. The fire inside was burning low. She held the letter over the flames. What are you doing? Jesse asked. She dropped it. They watched it burn. You do not need that paper to tell you who you are, Wren said. You know who you are. You are the man who stayed when he could have run. That is all that matters. Jesse looked at this child who understood things no 8-year-old should understand. I cannot say how you got so wise. I had a good teacher. Your mother. Her too. But I meant you. That evening they walked to the cottonwood tree together. The graves of Hannah and Lily waited beneath the spreading branches. Jesse had not been here since the night before the trial, had not brought the bullets for the anniversary this year, had been too consumed with Wren's case. Now he knelt between the headstones. Wren stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder. I have something to tell you, Jesse said to the graves, about these last months, about what happened. He told them everything, about finding Wren, about Nora's death, about the trial, about becoming a father again. The words came easier than they ever had before. When he finished, he sat in silence for a long time. Wren spoke. Do you think they are happy for you? Jesse considered. I think Hannah would be. She always wanted me to keep living, to find purpose. Lily would probably just want to know if we have a dog yet. Do we? No, but we could get one. Can I name it? Of course. I will name it Lily. Jesse's throat closed. He nodded, not trusting his voice. They sat together as the sun set. Finally, Jesse stood. He looked at the graves one more time. Then he did something he had never done before. He smiled. Goodbye, he said. Not forever, just for now. They walked back to the ranch in the gathering dark. When they reached the porch, Wren stopped. Jesse, she said, can I ask you something? Anything? Do you think broken people can be happy? Jesse looked at her, at this child who had saved him without trying, who had given him purpose when he thought purpose was dead, who had shown him that love was not about perfection, but about showing up. I think broken people can be real, he said, and real is better than perfect. Wren nodded slowly. Good, because I do not want perfect. I just want us. Then that is what we will be. They went inside. Jesse made tea. Wren drew pictures at the table. The cabin was warm and filled with lamplight and the sound of a child humming tunelessly. It was not the family Jesse had lost, but it was a family nonetheless. That night, Wren slept deeply. Jesse sat on the porch with his rifle across his knees, not because he expected trouble, just because old habits died hard. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. Somewhere a coyote sang to the moon. Jesse thought about the bullets he used to place on the graves, about the ritual of remembrance, about the weight of the dead, and he realized he did not need the bullets anymore, did not need physical tokens of guilt. The dead would always be with him, but so would the living, and the living needed him more. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Jesse woke in his chair to find Wren standing in the yard talking to the chickens. She was naming them again, giving them elaborate backstories, making them characters in her private mythology. Jesse watched from the porch, coffee in hand, and felt something he had not felt in years. Not happiness exactly. Something quieter. Something that felt like peace. Wren turned and saw him. "Papa," she called. "Come meet Queen Elizabeth. She just laid 3 eggs and she wants a medal." Jesse walked into the yard. The sun was rising over the eastern hills, painting everything gold. Wren took his hand and led him to the chicken coop, talking the whole time about Queen Elizabeth's accomplishments. And Jesse Calloway, who had carried death for so long, followed the living into the morning light. He did not know what would come next, did not know if he would fail again, did not know if he deserved this second chance. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he would be here, every day, for as long as this child needed him, because that was what fathers did. Not perfect fathers, not fathers without ghosts, just fathers who showed up and tried. And sometimes trying was enough. They spent the day working the ranch together, fixing fence, tending animals, the ordinary work of ordinary lives. And it was good. Not perfect, but good. That evening they sat on the porch together. Wren leaned against Jesse's shoulder. He put his arm around her. They watched the sunset paint the sky in colors that had no names. Papa, Wren said quietly, "Thank you. For what? For getting off your horse that day, for finding me, for staying." Jesse pulled her closer. "Thank you for letting me. I did not have a choice." "Yes, you did. You chose to trust me." "That was brave." "I was scared." "Being brave means being scared and doing it anyway." "Then we are both brave." "Yes, I suppose we are." They sat until the stars came out, until the night wrapped around them like a blanket, until the day ended and tomorrow began. And in that space between sunset and starlight, Jesse Calloway made himself a promise. Not to the dead, to the living, to this child who had given him back his life without even trying. He would be enough, not perfect, not without flaws, just enough. Present, trying, real. And for the first time in 12 years, Jesse Calloway believed he might actually keep a promise. The weight had not disappeared. It never would, but it had shifted, become something he could carry without being crushed, something he could live with, something that made him better rather than bitter. The night deepened, the ranch settled into sleep, and 2 broken people sat together on a porch in Wyoming, holding on to each other because it was all they had and all they needed. And it was enough.